Welcome to the Writer Groupie Podcast. I'm Kim Smith, the writing guru, bringing you discussions, insights, and insider details on planning, producing, promoting, and profiting as a writer. This is a podcast by writers for writers. You can find out more about Writer Groupie at www.writergroupie.net. And here's the next episode of Writer Groupie. And welcome everybody to another episode of Writer Groupie Podcast. This is also our video show. Today I am speaking with Gerald Hausman. And Gerald is the author and storyteller. Yes, he is a very good storyteller of both adult and children's books. Interestingly, about Native American animals, mythology, and West Indian culture. I can't read my own writing. He's published over 70 books, and we're going to get to chat with him. Jerry, how you doing?
Well, I'm doing great. It's really nice, and I like your introduction. Thank you.
You know, I was fascinated when I got a chance to look over your bio. I was like, now this is an author who has been an author for a long time and probably has known about writing since forever. And, you know, the industry, the book industry, the writing industry, things have changed so much since the 70s. I know you have books that were published in the 70s. And I just think that it would be interesting to hear from you about what you are all about. Tell us about you and tell us about this fabulous writing journey.
Well, I started out in a closet. I have to tell you that. I was about 5 years old, and my mother noticed that I would go into this closet in our house. We lived on a farm in Maryland. I would go into the closet, and I would leave just a little crack of light in the closet, and I would tell myself stories. And that's how I started. And she said it got to the point, though, where I went into the closet so often that she was afraid I was going to be cross-eyed.
Oh, man. I used to watch television shows, and that was how I got story told. And my mother used to tell me, get away from that television. You're going to get radiation. So you were telling the stories, and I was getting them through the TV.
I eventually learned to, with my mother's help, because she was, I think, a frustrated writer. She was a very good painter, and I would watch her paint, and I would get ideas for writing. But I think she wanted me to be a writer more than anything else. So she pushed me in that direction, and I started writing for the school newspapers in the 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, and then I did the announcing for the Friday program that, you know, included Bible reading, storytelling, little shows and dances and things like that. And I was the MC. And I liked it so much that I thought, you know, there's no difference between writing something and telling it.
Performing it, yeah.
But that was all due to the encouragement of my mom. So I first started publishing books in the 1960s, actually. My first book came out in 1968, and it was a collection of poetry.
Yeah, I noticed on your blog that you had some pretty cool writing. Some of it may be yours and maybe some was not yours. Poetry and descriptive verses. You have an interesting blog. It's almost like you're bringing out of your mind to your fingertips what you're thinking. I like it.
That's the old closet.
I recognize that disease. I do. I wish I could do more of that on my blog. I just don't have time.
I think those of us who write are like musicians who create in the quietude of an environment where there is no sound but what's going on inside the head and what's going on in the heart. And for me, that's really the excitement and the beauty of writing. I don't write necessarily to make money. I don't write, although that happens. I write because I can't help but write.
As I used to say, I write because I can't not write.
Yes, we say it together.
Yes. You know, I mean, seriously, I have tried to quit. I have put down the pen. I have shoved aside the keyboard. I have said no more. I'm tired. I'm burned out. Not going to do it. Forget it. And that would work for about a week. About that second week, I'd be washing dishes, and all of a sudden these characters would start talking to me. And it'd be like, you can't get away from it.
I quit once for 2 years. And the reason I quit was that I hated the business part of it so much. I really didn't love the editors I was working with, and I didn't love the feeling that I had such great pressure to create. And I wanted to be free again. And so I kind of went back into the closet of my heart, and I wrote poetry and poetry only, and published a few books of poetry, and that went so well that I said to myself, there might be a way of making a living as a poet. And sure enough, I went to an arts council, and this was in Massachusetts in 1971. And they hired me, and eventually I became the poet in residence in Pittsfield, Massachusetts.
Wow.
And that was a little town, but they seemed to love me there, and I love the kids. And I visited every school again and again and again. That went on for 7 years. So I was a professional poet for 7 years, and I didn't feel that restraint and the deadline business and the necessity to constantly be trying to come up with a new idea for a book that would sell.
Yeah. And that's, man, is our industry permeated with that right now. And I feel that myself. I have been very productive this year. This has been the best year I've ever had as a writer. I've done it all myself, though. Everything from editing to cover art, the writing, the promoting, the marketing, all of it. And I'm telling you, I am sitting here in December, and I'm thinking to myself, I got a plan for next year, and I don't know if I can top this. There's a lot that I have done this year, and it's like, okay, if I got to do more next year, I don't know if I'll be around to do it. It'll kill me.
What is your sun sign? I'm curious.
Capricorn.
You're Capricorn. Well, Capricorns get the job done, don't they?
They do. We just plod along until it happens.
I have a Capricorn moon, and I was told by an astrologer that it's that Capricorn moon that keeps me plodding up the mountain.
Something to do with Saturn in my house. I don't know. Whatever Saturn is.
Well, that's the Saturnine influence is a melancholic influence, so that would give you the ability to write some of the things that I see that you write.
Okay, well, cool. I'm going to have to hit you up after this show and find out more about your interest and knowledge about astrological things.
Saturn is sort of the dark side, but it doesn't have to be, because the way I understand astrology, your sun sign is the way you generally feel. Your moon is the way your heart works, and that would be your writing self. That would be your real inner you. And then the rising sign is what most people see when they meet you.
Okay. Interesting. And I don't remember all the details about mine. I had an astrologer ask for all my details, and that's what I found out was something to do with Saturn. Saturn was in my house or something.
It's particularly interesting, I think, for creative people to look into that, because it is an ancient science. It's not a make-believe thing. It's an ancient science, and it does reflect a lot what we do and why we do it.
I find it fascinating. Anything that has to do with knowledge, philosophy, anything like that from a way back, I'm interested in it.
I'm with you on that, 100%.
We learn from things that have gone on in the past. And,
yes.
We're destined to repeat history. It might be better for us, though, if we have a little beforehand knowledge of what happened the last time. Okay, that's my philosophy for the day. I'm sticking with it. Anyway, the most recent work you have right now is a Guns book. It's called Guns. It's an anthology of over 20 contributors. You yourself is a contributor to it, as well as the editor of it. Won't you tell us about Guns?
Well, I think I should hold the book up just very briefly.
There you go.
Am I holding it right? Can you see it?
You are.
Okay.
Looks good.
We have a picture of Blackbeard, a picture of Billy the Kid, and a picture of Wild Bill Hickok. and one of Edgar Allan Poe. And the reason why those guys are so interesting to me is that I grew up with those mythological people.
Yeah, I did
And
too.
and I thought how interesting if we could elucidate what they were really trying to say. And so we dug in deep and we found an ancestor of Poe, an ancestor of Billy the Kid, and some historians who had done work on Wild Bill. And in fact, it was Wild Bill's wife who told the story that's in the book. So we've got this wonderful historical opportunity to take a look through a kind of bifurcated mirror, you know.
Yeah.
It's almost like turning the telescope around the opposite way and looking at these people as if they could tell us something today. What is it that Billy the Kid really represents? Why has his myth and his legend been so important to so many people for so long? So many movies have been made about the guy.
Yeah, telling and retelling.
And I know. And so what happened was we got together with a Chandler. I'll just read you a tiny little piece of what she said
Okay.
at the end of the book, because to me it's very telling how writers come to terms with their subjects. What she says is, I hear Billy's mother, Catherine, and she sings. It's a lullaby, and Billy is newly born. Catherine rocks Billy in her arms. She swings and sways him, holding him tender as a dandelion down, drifting and joyful, and the smile of a light heart is in his face. She sings to Billy in a voice that's pure, and there's an Irish lilt to it. Billy snuggles in close to his mother's heart, and a bond that shapes both hearts begins. It never ends.
This whole book is full of those types of tidbits and descriptive phrasing pertaining to the stories and the characters. And I'm telling you, I really like it. I haven't read the whole thing yet. I've read about 3 of the stories. Really well done. I am very tickled to be able to say that I have a copy of this. And you were privileged enough to get to edit it. What was that like?
Well, I didn't edit it so much as what I did was I just sent out a message to various writers that I've known over the years. And I've said, gee, you know, you wrote this wonderful story about Billy the Kid's gun. Where did you first hear that story? And why did it inspire you to write it the way you did? And so I sent out messages to all of my friends and people that I had admired over the years. And you know what, Kim, the funny thing is that everybody wrote back. They were all enthusiastic about it because I had said something that I guess we all need to hear once in a while, and that is guns aren't the bad guys. You know, it's not the gun itself. It's not that piece of metal with a barrel. You know, we have a history of guns that is actually spiritual as well as physical and militaristic and dangerous and scary. There's a spiritual life to a gun, which is pretty interesting, you know, when you get right down to it.
Yeah.
And, you know, hunting aside, it's a wonderful fallow field that hasn't been dug into really, you know? And so that's why we wanted to do the book. And I didn't edit so much as I just asked.
And, you know, sometimes asking the right questions can start a whole ball rolling down the hill. I mean, how many times have we asked somebody questions and they gave us such interesting answers that we were compelled to write a story about it? Because almost every story starts with what if.
You know, you just said a mouthful. I couldn't have possibly said it better. That's the whole ball of wax right there.
It is.
You ask the right question, you get the right answer. In this case, I asked the question, could you think of a story that would appeal to people? It doesn't have to be about violence, but it's not necessarily not about violence. So you just do what you want. And everybody did. And, you know, one woman, I don't know if you read Elisa Vieta Ritchie's piece about the little boy in the 4th grade who wanted to tell the story from the point of view of a doe.
I have not got there yet.
It's a wonderful, heartwarming story, and I can read it, and actually, it makes me cry.
Aw. Yeah, for aspiring authors who are watching this program or listening to the podcast, you guys listen. A writer's job is to ask the questions and then to listen to the answers. You have to ask questions to get answers, but you have to listen to the answers to really develop the story.
I love it. That's music to my ears, what you just said.
It is.
Because so many people are convinced that all they have to do is write. That the whole thing is in the writing. No, it isn't. It's in the listening.
It is, because our history as writers began with stories. And
Yes.
a lot of us, maybe not all, but a lot of us, I'm going to say most of us, it became listening to a story being read to us. It became listening to a story being told to us via a movie or a television program. Listening is a very integral part of the writing process. It's not just reading, although that's a big part of it. And audiobooks are really bringing the two together, aren't they?
Yes, they are. I just published a collection for Audible, and it impressed me, actually, how resonant it was. And here's the funny part. After having told you about the closet, guess where I recorded my bit for
Oh,
Audible?
no, you did not do it in a closet.
It was done in the closet because it was the only place in this apartment where we're living which was quiet enough. And so I was told by the sound engineer to put blankets all around the walls and the ceiling. And I practically blanketed myself too. So I was hunched over with a microphone, and that was it. And he would say, "Read," and I would read. And then he would say, "Stop," and I would stop.
That is too funny. That is too funny. And, because I've considered doing the audio versions of my mystery series because it's very Southern, set in the South. And I have listened to quite a few audio narrators doing Southern voice. And sometimes it's just annoying. It's not what I'm after. I have that authentic Southern voice, Southern born and Southern raised. You know what I'm saying? And so I thought about doing my own narration. My only problem is I'm not a professional at that, and I think that my lack of professionalism in that respect would come through.
No, I think you are a professional, and I think your voice is really beautiful to listen to. So the thing about the voice is that's the true writer in you. It's your voice. We teach a writing course in Las Vegas, New Mexico, and we've been doing it now for 10 years. And one of the things we like to emphasize is the idea that if you know your voice, your inner voice, the sound of your voice when you're natural and being yourself, then that voice will communicate onto paper if you want it to. And
I agree with that. I believe that truthfully.
If you don't believe in your voice, I don't care how good you are at writing, it will come out mechanically.
And I have been told by a number of, industry people that one of my best traits as a writer is dialogue.
Yes.
Because the dialogue is very genuine.
Yes. And the great thing about the medium right now is that it's turning towards dialogue more than ever before. When I first started writing and publishing, it was more narration than it was dialogue. Now it's more dialogue than it is narration. And you could do an entire story using dialogue. I mean, with just little snippets of straight prose in between.
Yeah,
and
indeed.
You'd do fine.
Yeah, I mean, I've actually seen people to do that as a, what do you call it? Just a prompt,
Yeah.
They have to write a story all in dialogue, and they can't use any direction, they can't use any setting, no description, none of that. And so that's a tool that a lot of people are training themselves with to learn how to do that. And
it's funny you should say that, because one of the authors in our book is the son of the great science fiction fantasy writer Roger Zelazny. And so we published Trent Zelazny's story in the book. Trent is also a writer of great fantasy and, I would say, macabre and noir. And and he's developed quite a reputation on his own. His story is almost entirely dialogue and what's going on in the mind of the narrator. And that can be another kind of dialogue, is the narrator's mental acclimation to place, or, you know, the dramatic incident that's taking place. It's all happening in the mind of the main character. And I was just thinking about that and how dialogue can be used in that way too.
It can, totally. You kind of started me on my next question a while ago when you said that, audiobooks have become a big thing. A lot of authors publish digitally only now. They've come out with a book in ebook only. As I was going through your book list in Amazon, I noticed you even have books out there on audio cassette. To me, there is a lot of distance between audio cassette production and, an ebook. I mean, the industry has changed so much. Technology has gone so far. My thing is, what do you think is going to happen next? What do you think is going to be the next big thing? Because, face it, when we were back in the day producing audiobooks on cassettes, and now it's all digitally, that's interesting when you think about how far technology has advanced. What do you think is going to come next?
Well, I think it's already happened. In places like Japan, they've done what they call immediate or instant novels, and that is somebody is actually recording a story and narrating it, and it's being published as they're doing it.
Wow. That's really kind of cool.
I think we're already there, and the only thing is it will take a little time to sift through the amount of chaff, if you know what I mean. There are too many people writing, too many people publishing. The industry is overwhelmed, and what's happened is readers don't know anymore what to choose. But readers will always know what to listen to.
That's very good advice. That's really true. And I think as we move more and more into a mobile type of society where everybody's doing everything from their smartphones, they're getting all their news from their phones or their computers. They're getting all their entertainment via computer, via phone, tablet, that kind of thing. I think as we become more and more, the digital only, the mobile kind of society, I think that's going to be key in a lot of authors' future careers. As if, if you're going to do something, you need to make it where it can be accessed through the technology that's being used by your readership. I don't think that an author, and I could be wrong, I'm just saying this is my opinion, I don't think an author can be a hardcover author only anymore.
No, I think you're right. That's very true. But going back to the idea of the instant novel, or the exploded novel, there are all kinds of names for it. Do you know some of them? Some other ones?
No. This is the first I've heard of it. I'm not very widespread, am I?
I think what's going to happen is that creative types like us will probably find the medium that is most comfortable. And writing is still several steps removed from a reader. Whereas storytelling itself, such as we're doing right now, this is immediate. It's instantaneous.
That's true.
And I think we're going to get closer and closer to that, and people may even create films almost on the spot. And I think cinema verite is the way to say that in a way, and I think we're already there. I think it's already happening. And that's why the news is so interesting, because newscasters used to be like Walter Cronkite. And today they're more like Andy Warhol.
That's true. And it used to be a long time before you could get the entire news story. You would get bits and pieces this evening and bits and pieces the next evening, and in a week you'd get the whole story with video. And now they've got reporters, at the spot reporting it as it's happening practically. And I just think that immediacy is really key in what's going to happen with our industry as time goes on.
You're so right about that. And watching young people like our grandchildren, we take care of our grandchildren part of the time while our daughter is teaching at Highlands University, and she'll call us up and she'll say, "You guys have to make dinner tonight, or you have to pick them up, or go to their concert or something," and she'll be having a late meeting, and we'll take over there. But I'm getting a real charge from being with them because I see how they use their little handheld devices. I see how they talk to them, and they're one with them. That's the future. We're all going to be in that way. And I think the more creative we are, the more the possibilities open wide for us as artists.
I agree. I don't think it was ever said better. We really need to learn from the youth of today if we want to know what we're going to be looking toward for the future. Because time stops for nobody. It keeps right on marching up, and so does technology. And if we don't stay up with it, then we're not reaching the readership. We're not reaching that market that we're trying to touch, because they are there. They've already moved to that area, whether you do or not.
Think about Charles Dickens and the serial novel just for a second, because Dickens was where we are now. He was at the forefront of a new technology. He was writing instantaneous novels, little serial stories, in effect, that were linked. So David Copperfield and Great Expectations, all those books were written for very fast magazine publication or newspaper publication. And that's what I'm trying to say, is I think we'll probably drift into that new world, and I believe there will be a handheld device that will pick up what we say and probably even edit it while we say it.
Hey, I like that idea. Whatever it does to help me out, make me better writer, I'm okay with that.
Right.
Jerry, it has been so much fun chatting with you this evening. Well, actually, it's afternoon. The time change between us is amazing. My daughter is out on the West Coast, and it's like I have to really think about what time it is before I contact her about anything, because it's like, no, it's 10 o'clock here, but it's only 8 o'clock there.
Very true.
So anyway, we're down to the last few minutes of the show, and I just wanted to give you an opportunity to promote anything you want to promote. Tell us where we can find you online. This is your minute to take over the show.
Well, I would just show you a few books. This is one that I did with my wife called The Metaphysical Cat, and it has one of the prettiest little Christmas stories ever written, a true story. And I don't know, I love the book because a student of mine back in the 1960s who became a painter, she did the cover for this book.
It's beautiful.
And I've maintained a really close relationship with all of the kids that I taught back in the 60s and 70s. This book is the Bob Marley song made into a board book for real littlies. And this book has been our bestseller. It's gone far and wide. This is another Bob Marley story that we did with Cedella Marley, the eldest daughter of Bob Marley. And it's about what Bob's life was like as a little boy in Jamaica.
Move that this way just a little bit, because I can't read the title. The other way.
Okay, the other way.
There you
it's go. The Boy from 9 Miles.
Okay, there you go.
And he lived in the village of 9 Miles in Jamaica, and nobody had ever told his story except his grandmother. And we decided that we would do it. And it took us about 4 years to do it.
Fantastic.
This one is How Chipmunk Got Tiny Feet.
Cute
and
title.
Ashley Wolf did the pictures. Ashley is a really fine illustrator.
Very well done.
This one took many, many years to gather the stories. It took me, in some cases, 22 years to get those Navajo stories.
Wow, that's wonderful.
So that's just a little momentary travelogue through our writing history.
Well, and I'll have links to all those titles in the blog post that accompanies this podcast, you guys. So all y'all have to do is just click on the cover and go straight to Amazon, pick it up. And
Nice.
Jerry, you are just phenomenal, and I am so pleased to get to make your acquaintance, and I just hope we stay friends for a long time because I just feel like you're somebody that I can learn a lot from.
Well, I feel the same way about you.
All right, well, I'm going to button us up and get us going here. Thanks so much again for being on episode 74.
Okay, one love to you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Writer Groupie. For booking information, show notes, and more, visit writergroupie.net.